It started at 2 a.m., the sound of metal clanking outside my window. I thought it was just the wind rattling the gate again, until I heard the low rumble of an engine idling. I looked out, half asleep, and there it was, my work truck hooked to a tow cable. And standing proudly beside it in his robe and slippers was HOA Karen's husband, Roger. Now, Roger wasn't exactly subtle. The man had a flashlight in one hand, a clipboard in the other, and that smug expression of, "I'm doing the neighborhood a favor." My truck was my livelihood, a heavy-duty tow rig with my company's logo on the side. I ran the only towing service within 20 miles. And here he was, trying to tow my truck from my driveway. I threw on a jacket and stormed outside. "Roger, what the hell are you doing?" He blinked like I'd interrupted a sacred ritual. "You're in violation of HOA Policy 6B, no commercial vehicles parked overnight," he said, holding up that clipboard like it was a court order. I almost laughed. "You realize that's my truck, right? You're trying to tow a tow truck. Owned by me." He frowned. "Doesn't matter whose it is. My wife said it's an eyesore. She wants it gone." Ah, there it was, Karen's decree, the self-proclaimed queen of our cul-de-sac, always demanding aesthetic harmony, which really meant anything she didn't personally approve of had to vanish. I leaned against the hood, arms crossed. "Roger, if you unhook that cable right now, we'll forget this ever happened. If not, I'll treat it like any other illegal tow." He chuckled. "You don't scare me, buddy. You don't have the authority here." That's when I smiled. "Actually, I do. Want to see the license plate on your tow truck? It's registered to my company." He froze, flashlight trembling slightly. His driver, some teenager he probably paid under the table, looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo, and started dialing. Let's get the sheriff involved. I'm sure he'll love hearing about a private citizen performing unauthorized towing on residential property. Roger's confidence deflated like a balloon. He muttered something about misunderstandings and fumbled to unhook the chain. But I knew this wasn't over. If Roger was acting this bold, it meant Karen had a bigger plan brewing. And I was ready for it. By sunrise, the whole neighborhood knew. Roger's failed too. AM tow mission had spread faster than wildfire through our little cul-de-sac. Most folks found it hilarious. Others whispered that I'd humiliated the HOA, president's husband. And that, of course, meant one thing. Karen was about to strike back. At 8:05 a.m. sharp, I heard the familiar stomp of heels echoing down my driveway. I didn't even need to look up. That sound could only belong to her. Karen Hendress, the self-crowned monarch of Meadow Ridge Estates, marched straight toward me like she was serving a royal decree. "Jack!" she barked. "We need to have a serious talk about last night's incident." I was sipping my coffee on the porch, enjoying the show before it even started. "You mean your husband's little midnight adventure?" "Yeah, we do." She crossed her arms so tight it looked painful. "Roger was only enforcing community standards. Your tow truck violates HOA policy. It's a commercial vehicle, clearly stated in Section 6B. "Karen," I said calmly, "I've lived here for 6 years. That truck's been in the same spot every night. Nobody cared until you did." She smirked. "That's because I actually run this place now. The neighborhood deserves order. And your eyesore of a truck is lowering property values." I almost spit out my coffee. "Order? You sent your husband to steal my vehicle in the middle of the night." She waved dismissively. He was within his rights as acting community enforcer. That's when I decided to end the charade. I stood, walked to my truck, and opened the glove box. I pulled out a laminated document and handed it to her. "Read the fine print." Her eyes scanned the page, then froze. This can't be right." "Oh, it's right," I said, grinning. "That document means my company has the exclusive towing contract for Meadow Ridge Estates, signed by your HOA board, before you ever moved in." She looked like I'd slapped her with a gavel. The queen had just discovered she wasn't in charge of the kingdom after all. You're bluffing," she hissed. "Call the county office if you don't believe me," I said. "Or better yet, ask your husband why he didn't recognize the name on the tow license he tried to use last night." For the first time ever, Karen was speechless. She spun on her heel, muttering about legal action and future complaints. But I could tell she wasn't done. She was regrouping. And when Karen regrouped, things got loud. 2 days later, the storm hit. Flyers appeared on every door in Meadow Ridge. Bold letters across the top read, "Community Action Meeting to address unauthorized commercial vehicles." Translation, Karen's personal crusade against my tow truck. By evening, half the neighborhood had gathered in the clubhouse. Karen stood front and center behind a folding table, armed with a gavel, a binder full of citations, and that trademark grin of fake civility. Roger sat beside her, bandaged pride and all, pretending not to notice the side eyes from the crowd. I walked in last. My boots echoed across the tile floor and every head turned. Karen's smile tightened. "Ah, Mr. Dawson," she said sweetly, "so glad you could join us. We're discussing your ongoing violations." "Violations?" I asked, taking a seat in the front row. "Or your vendetta?" A few neighbors chuckled quietly. Karen glared daggers. "Let's maintain decorum," she snapped. "As per HOA policy." "Actually," I interrupted, "before we go quoting policy, maybe we should talk about that contract your board signed with Dawson. Towing 3 years ago." Gasps rippled through the room. I could see the board members exchanging worried looks. Karen blinked, caught off guard. "That's irrelevant," she said quickly. "This is about neighborhood aesthetics." One of the older residents, Mrs. Collins, raised a hand. "Karen, dear, Jack's truck has been parked there since I moved in. It never bothered anyone, but your husband trying to tow it at 2 in the morning? That bothered everyone." The room murmured in agreement. Karen's face turned crimson. "Mrs. Collins, please stay on topic." Another neighbor spoke up, Tom from down the street. "Karen, if we're enforcing rules, maybe start with your husband's illegal tow attempt. That's a crime, not a policy." I leaned back, arms folded. "Exactly. And since that incident, I've been getting calls from residents saying, 'You've been threatening fines and inspections that don't exist in the bylaws. Maybe we should vote on that.'" The board chair, a nervous man named Phil, cleared his throat. Technically Jack's correct. Karen, your enforcement actions weren't authorized." Karen slammed the gavel. "You're all missing the point. This community is falling apart because of people like him." But it was too late. The tide had turned. The same neighbors she'd bossed around for years were standing up to her. One even shouted, "Maybe it's time you stop pretending to own the place." Karen froze, eyes darting, realizing her authority was crumbling. And I couldn't help but smile, because I knew this was just the beginning of her downfall. Karen didn't take her public defeat well. The night after the HOA meeting, she doubled down. While the rest of us were enjoying the newfound peace, she was plotting revenge. But this time, her plan wasn't just petty. It was criminal. At 5:30 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the security cameras by my driveway. I opened the app and there she was, Karen Hendress herself, flashlight in one hand, bolt cutters in the other, creeping toward my tow truck. I couldn't believe it. Not only was she trespassing, she was about to cut the security. Chain on a registered commercial vehicle. A felony. I slipped on my boots, grabbed my phone, and started recording as I walked outside. "Morning, Karen," I said loudly. "Couldn't sleep again?" She spun around like a deer in headlights. You can't record me!" "Oh, but I can," I said, showing the red light blinking on my phone. "You're on my property, holding stolen tools, about to damage my equipment. Want to explain that for the camera?" Her face twisted. "You're violating HOA policy." "Karen," I interrupted. "The HOA doesn't outrank state law. And last time I checked, cutting my property is called vandalism." I called the sheriff right there in front of her. She tried to argue, but when the patrol car pulled up 5 minutes later, her confidence melted. The deputy stepped out, took one look at the footage, and sighed. "Mrs. Hendress, we've talked about this before." "Deputy, I was protecting community standards," she shouted. He raised an eyebrow. "By trespassing at dawn with bolt cutters?" Roger came running out in his robe again, shouting, "It's all a misunderstanding." But the deputy had already taken the cutters from her hand. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me." The sight was poetic. Karen, the self-proclaimed ruler of Meadow Ridge Estates, being led down my driveway in handcuffs, while the whole neighborhood peeked from their windows. Roger trailed behind, begging the deputy not to press charges. I handed over the footage calmly. "Consider it evidence. And for the record, my truck's staying right where it is." Karen shot me one last glare before being guided into the back seat. "You haven't heard the last of me," she barked. But we had. A week later, the HOA board held an emergency vote and unanimously removed her as president. Roger sold their house shortly after. The neighborhood went quiet again. Peaceful. Normal. And every time I park my tow truck, I can't help but smile at the empty lot across the street where Karen's kingdom once stood. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's dealt with their own HOA Karen. Drop a comment below. What would you have done if someone tried to tow your truck?